So in the last couple chapters, it was revealed that being a clone is a thing now, and it's kind of like
Yes.
changed the community. Like now there's all this speculation of how this character's a clone, that character's a clone.
We're all clones.
Exactly. It's like I'm wondering if I'm a clone myself at this point. But
Yeah. I look in the mirror and I start sweating a little bit. It's like, whoa, what's going on here?
but this clone theory that we're going to be talking about is actually pretty good, at least in my opinion, and it might actually be true. I don't know, but we'll talk about it. So it was recently revealed that Stussy from CP0 is actually a clone of Miss Buckingham Stussy, who's actually Weevil's mom, and yeah, it turns out that she was a part of the Rocks Pirates back in the day, and we don't know exactly how she was cloned yet, but it was definitely through Vegapunk, and I guess through his work with Judge during his time with Mads, right?
Yeah.
So that leads to who else is a clone? There's got to be more clones than just one. It would be odd if
Yeah,
Stussy.
it would be kind of strange, especially when they framed Stussy, or at least labeled her as the first successful clone. So with that, it kind of opens up the door already. Like, are there unsuccessful ones out there? Who's clone number 2? Who's clone number 3? Is Weevil a clone? Which I'm sure a lot of people can come to the consensus that he is, but it's just not confirmed 1000% yet. It's just such a interesting concept to bring into the world of One Piece. Like, if you told me from episode 1 that they'd introduce clones into the series, I just wouldn't believe it. But here we are.
Yeah, me too. I would have been like, no, we don't need to do that. Oda's not going to do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, he did. So what if one of the failed clones is Zoro? Like this whole time, it was Zoro. He's one of the failed clones. And I know it's like, okay, yeah, whatever. That sounds like fan fiction. And I agree, it kind of does. But let's break it down because it kind of starts to weirdly hold water at some point. So, first of all, the whole thing that intrigues me the most about Zoro possibly being a clone is that his whole backstory and the mystery around it. Like, we never got it fully.
It's
and we
missing.
Thought, yeah,
it's
we
actually
thought
not there.
We thought we were going to get it in Wano. Didn't really get it. I mean, we got more than we ever got, but just still nothing. We don't know like exactly where Zoro came from. And for the longest time, I thought that he was Shimotsuki Ushimaru's son because everything made sense. He looks like him. The timeline.
The Fox thing kind of likes him. Like,
everything.
There's so many things there.
And then it turns out that no, it's not him because I didn't even know this until like a couple weeks ago. But Oda said in the SBS for volume 101, just straight up that Ushimaru was not Zoro's father.
Yeah.
So, and then that was kind of like, okay, so then no one is his father then, I guess, right? Because there was no other candidates at that point. There was like nothing. And him having like, the green hair and none of the other Shimotsukis have it, definitely by anime standards at this point. So at this point, what is going on with Zoro? Like, where is he coming from? Who is his family? And it's because he may have been a failed clone this whole time.
Which is a crazy thing to think about, but it becomes more and more plausible as Egghead goes on.
Exactly, because then it's like it answers the question of like, why did it take so long to reveal the origin of Zoro, like his full backstory? And it's like, oh, because he's a freaking clone, so it's going to take some time to drop that bomb on the audience. So before we go into all of the minutia of it, let's just first acknowledge that there's clearly parallels between Zoro and Ryuma throughout the series. Very, blatant to the audience for sure. And they even straight up meet in Thriller Bark, of course. And then there was like one of these images shown in the anime recently. I forget what episode it is, but we see like Ryuma when he was like in his prime. And he looks like a facsimile of Zoro pretty much, just with like longer hair. And they both have scars on their left eyes too.
So funny enough, there was actually a one-shot that Oda wrote around the same time that One Piece started about Ryuma, or at least a samurai that slayed a dragon. And yeah, he looks like the prototype version of Zoro. And then even to draw the parallels further down, when we got to Punk Hazard, we saw Zoro cut down a dragon, right? He cut down the dragon at the very beginning, and that almost parallels Ryuma and how he slayed a dragon in his lifetime. So him and Ryuma are like one in the same, right? Like there's so much that's similar about them that I would just believe this clone notion outright, especially as we're in the part of the series where we know that clones exist.
Exactly. And that leads to like the other big question with all of this stuff. And it's like, okay, fine. Zoro's a clone of Ryuma, but like how? How did this happen? Okay, so there's actually kind of some evidence for this as well. So pretty sure it was 23 years ago, right? That Moria was in Wano going against Kaido. And
Yep.
after
Prime Moria.
After losing to Kaido, Moria took Ryuma's corpse from Wano. So Zoro is 21, right?
Yeah.
So that doesn't exactly line up with it, but that is fine too, because it's not like, Moria got Ryuma's corpse, and then immediately after that, Zoro was made, and then, 21 years later, he became Zoro. I like that there's some kind of leeway there with the 2 years, between 23.
And it makes sense because going back to the Weevil comment, if Weevil is an unsuccessful clone of Whitebeard, Weevil is 35. And apparently, when Whitebeard was a part of the Rock's crew, which is around the same time that Stussy got her model made, that was 40 years ago. So there is that little bit of a gap that exists between when they wanted to start cloning and when the clone was actually made.
Yeah, exactly. And we know that, or we don't know it, but it's heavily implied, at least off of the cover page of one of the recent chapters, that's Buckingham Stussy was a part of Mads, right?
Yeah, the freeloader of Mads.
Yeah, so she left Rocks, and then I guess some years after that, she was with Mads, and then that's when Weevil was hypothetically made.
Yeah, Weevil, I would be really shocked if they actually came out with another plot twist that Weevil was the legitimate son of Whitebeard, but just the way she words it, like, he's got to be a clone.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's not a coincidence that this is all being revealed around the same time. Like, it's definitely all
and then
connected.
She's like, yo, ask Vegapunk about his blood. Go ask him. Like, okay.
Exactly. And why would Whitebeard and Stussy make Weevil? Like, they're two, like, super prime people. Like, they're not going to make
like, how did he pop out?
Yeah, some sloth guy. But, okay, so, yeah, we got the time there. So that kind of makes sense of Moria getting Ryuma's corpse. But it's like, so how did Vegapunk get it? And that's where things kind of fall apart. Because we don't know. There's no way to know for sure how Vegapunk got it. But
I actually have one small tie-in about how that might have happened.
Oh, please, let me hear it.
So, a couple chapters ago when they mentioned the weight of the soul, and it weighs like a couple kilograms or whatever.
Yeah.
He mentions that a scientist from the West Blue is the one who actually came up with that theory and discovery. And the only real scientist we know from the West Blue would probably be Dr. Hogback. And if Dr. Hogback was with Gecko Moria back in the days, then that could explain how Hogback, Moria, and maybe even Vegapunk all have ties together. Maybe they met up at some point, and that's how Vegapunk learned about the weight of the soul, and that's where he also got a piece of Ryuma's DNA to create Zoro. And even explaining how Zoro maybe ended up in the same village that he did in the beginning, there's also some explanation there. Because since Vegapunk has ties with the revolutionaries, maybe he just gave him to Dragon. Maybe he was a failed clone, and he's like, hey, like, I need a home for this kid. He can't stay with me. You give it to somebody. And then, guess what we saw back in the Ace, Sabo, and Luffy flashback? We saw Dragon's ship stationed outside of Shimotsuki Village. So there are a lot of tie-ins if you really look into it. Of course, they're all stretches right now. But if we wanted to go with this narrative, there's definitely some evidence that could back this up, which is why I'm not 100% sold on this theory, but I am inclined to give it some leeway, saying, okay, maybe this is actually very plausible.
Wow. I didn't think of any of that, but that's awesome. That's exactly what this theory needed.
Yeah.
Wow. That would actually tie everything together, too, with Dragon, because Dragon has been there for many kids except his own, so...
And there's one more piece of evidence, too, of people asking, like, oh, like, how does Dragon and the Revolutionaries actually have ties with Shimotsuki Village? Maybe they're just passing by. Well, that's not exactly the case, because if you look in the flashback as well, it looks like Dragon's ship is actually docked. Or not docked, but it's at least anchored down. It's not moving. And even when we get the Flame Emperor Sabo epithet and we, get revealed that countries are worshiping Sabo the Liberator, if you look closely at the flags in the background, you actually see a Shimotsuki flag as well, which is really interesting. And people were like, okay, maybe this is proof that, Kozuburo, or I think that's his name, the instructor at Zoro's village,
Yeah.
is a part of the revolutionaries. And if that's the case, then, I mean, Dragon getting a clone and giving it to the Shimotsuki village, that could work. That could work.
Whoa. Holy crap. Wow. Wow. I think that
The devil's in the details, man.
I don't know. I'm one of those people that like after they watch like a really good theory video, I'm like, "Yep, I'm sold." Like I'm not like I am skeptical about things for sure. I have to be, but
Oh yeah, we always got to stay skeptical.
man, that makes me want to believe so much. And then I guess the last thing that we could touch on is just Vegapunk finding out that Momonosuke turned out to be a pink dragon, and he said it was a failure because the color was wrong. Could that be maybe hinting that Zoro is a failed clone because his hair is green and not blue? Because the Shimotsu's
Yeah, and
have blue hair.
here's something funny too. Almost everything that's failed that Vegapunk has, he has thrown away. He has an entire scrapyard of failed projects. Momonosuke's Devil Fruit was failed, so he threw that back in Punk Hazard. Weevil, if he is an unsuccessful clone, he gave that to Miss Bakken. He doesn't want his failed experiments. And if Zoro was a failed clone, it would explain, or even just because of the hair, if he was a failed clone, it would make a lot of sense as to why Vegapunk would give him away.
Bro.
So that's another thing as to why Zoro wouldn't be on Egghead Island with Vegapunk, because Vegapunk doesn't want to look at his failure because of the green hair.
Bro. Perfect. And also, I mean, that's why he's with Stussy. Or whatever they have going on, because he didn't consider her a failure.
Yeah. That was a successful clone.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Yeah, we can end it there. That was awesome.
No, yeah, that's